Okay, let's go. All right, so who are we talking about, right? Seleucus. Who is Seleucus, right? Seleucus was one of the generals of, or they call him Diadoches of Alexander the Great, right? So basically, and then, I'll get to this, but Seleucus, you could say his, their reign was all the way from, like, if you can say current day Turkey all the way to India. They had some, I'm particularly from Uzbekistan, so particularly at some point they were in charge of Bactrian kingdoms, and I'll get into it a little bit, but this is what they are. So what happens is Seleucus, and at that point it was Antiochus III, was at the time a king of Seleucus Empire, and therefore was encroaching on or approaching the Roman, so to speak, territory, not Roman territories, but the territories that the Romans had allegiance to. I mean, there was people that paid, like Macedonia, for example, Boeotia and Sicily. They were paying all this dowries toward Rome because of the fact that Rome had won wars against them at some point. And we're going to get to the Macedonian War, so I'm not going to touch on Macedonian wars, except I'm going to mention here and there. Okay. So what I wanted to talk about first, different leagues, and they're going to be important in this war. Aetolian League, which was formed to 160, and Aquian League, right? And they're just shown here. So if you look at it, let me get the, I guess the, either laser pointer going. So we'll, so Ayatollah League, as you can see, it's in this region right here, and then you have Aquian League, which is right here. Okay, and then you have a kingdom of Pergamon, which may or may not participate on the side of Rome, or the Seleucus, or you call them Seleucids, whatever you want to call them. And then you have some Greek free states, and that's going to be important too, particularly Sparta is going to come into play. Okay, so that's the, so let's just go through who the Seleucus were, who are they, right? So basically, before Seleucids, obviously, in the territories that they had, it was Persian Empire, right? Seleucid Empire was, established after the collapse of Alexander the Great Empire, and then Seleucid was one of the generals of Alexander the Great, and there was, wars with Ptolemy and different kind of wars that was, initiated for him to expand. By the time the Romans came into the area of Greece, Seleucid Empire was huge. Okay, even though it lost its Bactrian kingdom, it still was pretty big. You can see here on the bottom, look at the Seleucid, it goes from Galatia all the way to, like I said, Bactrian kingdom. You put it in perspective, Bactria is where Afghanistan is right now. And it's basically, Arabic Peninsula and then it goes, all the way, and it had wars with Ptolemy, and Ptolemy is Egyptian, obviously, dynasty. As you have mentioned, modern day Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, it's huge. During Empire's time period, there was two capitals. One was located at Antioch, and one was located in Mesopotamia called Cilicia. Okay, that's the first slide. How did it start? Right, started with Seleucus I, one of Alexander the Great friends. He was actually one of his best friends. He was, before he was a ruler of, he was a ruler of Babylon, and he lost Babylon to Antigonus. He ruled between 325 315, and the time we're talking about right now, as I've mentioned, 180 to 200 BC. So this is, 100 some more years prior to that. I mean, almost 200 years. His rule ended when he was murdered by Ptolemy Karasnos, who was his partner in ruling because he supported the Egyptian throne over Seleucid rules. Okay, so we've spoken about that. Oh, 1 second. What's interesting is Seleucid Empire is how they met and brought war elephants, and the war elephants are going to be in play here as well, Indian war elephants particularly, and how they meet them is the Seleucus basically was taken over Bactria, and it's somewhere around that time they also went to India, and I don't even know how to pronounce it. He met this guy Chandragupta, the leader of the Mauryan Empire, and he's 9,000 war elephants basically, and that's how you got introduced to Indian elephants. All right. So religion, particularly, they would do various gods. They're Macedonian, right? Obviously, deities, worship Apollo. Culture was, mixed. They had Jews. Obviously, we know Maccabean revolt that was against the Seleucids, right? That was later on, obviously, but still, Jews lived there. Greeks, Armenians were used a lot in his army as part of the cavalry. They will basically adopt many of the Greek lifestyles. In fact, there was recent discoveries that were made in Bactria, which is Seleucid part, and then particularly Greek towns, with amphitheater and all this other knickknacks, stuff like that. And today we'll probably do Google Earth to look at some of the artifacts. Administration, was 1 second. How do you get rid of the pointer? 1 second. All right. All right. So administration, the government was based off the Greek culture, right? As I've mentioned, the army and bureaucracy both enforced rules, kept order. The newer cities that were established were overseen by magistrate, and they were responsible for the water supply, public bathrooms, and streets to increase the Greek impact on everyone. Seleucus encouraged Greek immigrants to settle in the cities. So if they, for example, had a Bactrian cities in Afghanistan, they had Greek settlements there. And what's interesting is before Alexander the Great arrived to Bactria, there was already Greek settlements, probably from Ionia, so to speak. All right. So they had different wars that was going on. In fact, by the time the war with Romans, they just finished with war with Ptolemy, which was an Egyptian empire. So therefore, it's an interesting fact that they're always constantly at war with each other. All this Diadochi, and now they're descendants. I mean, in the end, basically, they were taken over by Parthians, and particularly, because of the loss by Antiochus III, even though it continued for another 150 years, it kind of disappeared. All right, this is the Antiochus III, and this is the guy we're going to talk about today, particularly who were engaged in wars. So let's keep going. All right, I just wanted to show, what are the particular artifacts. And the one on the right, there's a temple where Seleucid's king Antiochus I was buried. And then we'll look at it today for Google Earth. And then on the left, you have, an artifact where it says a war elephant, battle elephant by Seleucid Empire. All right. So let's just go. And then obviously, like I said, I'm not going to touch on a lot on the fact that there was a Macedonian war prior to that. Oh, by the way, I'm sorry. Anybody has any questions or want to add anything? No, right? Okay, so let's just continue then. How did this all came about? This war with Rome. As you know, during the Macedonian Wars, Philip V was defeated by, particularly Titus Quintius Flaminius, who was, interesting enough, basically, he could actually write and speak Greek. He was in love with anything Hellenistic, right? So, and then we'll get into maps, but So basically Rome had won war against Macedon, and they're now under the Roman. I would say they were not an affiliate. They were basically an affiliate of Rome, so to speak, and they wouldn't want to wage wars in Rome. And Rome had particular agreements with them where they could have certain amount of navy, certain amount of troops. They have to help them during different war efforts, and so forth, so on. All right. So in this particular conflict, we're interested in several aspects. One second. Let me just do this presenter view. All right. In this particular conflict, we're going to be interested in several characters, right? Romans, we're going to talk about Lucius Cornelius Scipio, sounds familiar. Publius Cornelius Scipio, Eminis of Pergamon, and on the Seleucid side, we're going to talk about Antiochus III, his son Seleucus, and Zeuxis, which is his general. So, as I've mentioned before, this Titus Quintus Flamininus wins the war against Macedon, comes back to Rome, and throws a party, right? And particularly, they call it Isthmian Games. Isthmian Games were set up. It's actually a Greek custom, and basically it was set up to commemorate God Apollo during a certain time, and you could think of them like mostly like an Olympics type of thing. So during the 196, Flaminius took the speaker platform, declared that Romans will leave Greeks free and garrisoned, untaxed, and autonomous after over a century of Macedonian rule. Okay, so basically Macedonians, all these generals, right, that was ruling all these Greek territories, they were apparently were very bad to Greeks, even though they were Greeks themselves. So therefore, Romans said, we'll ease your worries and stuff like that. So in Rome, Senate decreed 5 days of Thanksgiving for the victory over Macedonians, which is this Isthmian Games. Also at these games, he was met by the party of envoys who had come at the behest of the Seleucus king Antiochus. Okay, so he sends the diplomatic party during this game to saying, congratulations, you guys won against Macedonians, and particularly even though Antiochus had an agreement with Philip V, who was the Macedonian king, he still wanted to be on Rome's good side, and Rome had none of it, right? So now this guy, Flamininus, goes to Antiochus and said, basically what you need to do is you need to, instead of having a peaceful agreement with us, you want to have a peaceful agreement with us, you have to leave all the lands that you conquered. And Seleucid Empire was huge, and withdraw all your garrisons from, and basically, and told them to stop basically crossing into Greece and make sure you stay on your Asia Minor side where you are, by Syria, by Arabic, and I showed that in the map. And what's interesting is the diplomatic party went back to Antiochus and said, Romans is threatening us now. We hadn't been in war with them, but we kind of supported Macedonians, but they're threatening us right now. What do we need to do here? Seleucus became very aggressive, right? So he went over, and we'll go over the map, and he conquered Caria, Lycia, Cilicia, Coele, Syria, and other Asiatic holdings of Ptolemies. So he basically started conquering Ptolemy's lands, but then he wanted to secure the Ptolemy's land. So he marries his daughter to a 10-year-old Ptolemy the Fifth. Here's Aaron. Oh, by the way, does anybody have any questions or want to add anything? No? All right. Does anybody hear me? Hello?
Yes, yes, we hear
I hear
you.
you.
No problem.
Okay.
Yeah, we hear you.
It's just crickets here. So marries his daughter, the 10-year-old Ptolemy the Fifth in Egypt, trying to secure his Egyptian side so that he can invade Europa, right? And basically, what happens is, he invades, through Hellespont into the Greek lands, and therefore conquering, areas like Chersonesos and besieging Meditos. What's interesting, he wanted to show to the Greeks, and this was an interesting fact, he wanted to show to the Greeks that I came here to basically free you if in case Romans would attack Greek islands after the defeat of Macedonians. And after the war of Greeks and Macedonians, he sent about 5,000 troops to the land where the battle happened, collected all of the dead bodies of Greeks and brought them back to show Greeks that, look, what Romans did was horrible. I want to bury all these people or burn them, whatever the custom was. And I want to be basically your leader, or strategoi, so to speak. And correct me if I'm wrong, Greg and Paul, is strategoi, that's like a leader, right? So so that's basically what, or
General.
right? You want to be their strategoi. So so now the Romans are not amused, right? It's like, okay, you want to be part of the Greek, so to speak, leader of the Greek leagues, but they're not amused. All right, just go next. Oops. But they don't want war yet. So what's interesting in Rome, what's happening in Rome right now? They have there's a politics that's being dominated by two men. Titus Quintius Flaminus, and a hero of the war against Carthage, Publius Cornelius Scipio Africanus. Scipio is hothead, okay? I want to go and I want to destroy Antiochus. How dare he cross Hellespont? What the hell is wrong with him? I'm just going to go and go head on. The Flamininus says, wait. Let's try to do diplomatic mission to Lysimachia, and then we'll ask Antiochus to kindly leave the Europe and return, back to your lands and stuff like that. And like I said, Antiochus was smart enough to first secure his lands or a war with Ptolemy in Egypt, and he married his daughter to 10-year-old Ptolemy V. So negotiating continued between Rome and Antiochus. And what's interesting, now Antiochus learned that 10-year-old Ptolemy V, somebody threw a fake news, and said Ptolemy V is dead. So now his rear end, is basically open. Now he wants to come back. So initially he thought that you can go into Europe. Now he's afraid to go into Europe because he doesn't know who he's going to take over for Ptolemy. Apparently, it was a fake news, right? So therefore, he still wanted to invade Europe, and so he goes back to Europe. And he didn't want to attack Egypt. So initially, after the death or presumed death of his son-in-law, he wanted to attack Egypt. Then he changed his mind. He went back to Europe. So let's just look at the map, how it looks, right? So does everybody see the map? So Antiochus, let me just get a laser. Where did I get laser? All right, 1 second, guys. Trying to navigate through this.
We can see the pointer.
Oh, you can see the pointer? Okay. So this is Antiochus right here. So he needs to cross the Aegean Sea to go into the Macedon and city of Colchis and all that stuff. Basically, he can't go by land because he doesn't know if Philip V is aligned with Rome or not yet. So because you lost the war, so you might stab him in the back, right? So Pergamon, which is right here before Hellespont, was traditional rival to Seleucus and Antiochus, eager to, obviously Antiochus was eager to change that. So he attempted to marry his daughter to the king Omerus II of Pergamon. Okay, now the king already concluded the Roman allegiance, and they had none of it. It's like he rejected that alliance, and you will see throughout this whole campaign where Antiochus wants to cross into Greece and be leader of both leagues that were set up, but some of them do accept it, some don't. And in this case, particularly this king Omerus rejected the hand in marriage, I guess, of his daughter. But Antiochus was unfazed and entered the alliance with the king of Cappadocia, Aristeas, instead. Okay. And we know where Cappadocia is. Everybody goes to Turkey to enjoy themselves, right? Meaning like vacation spot. At the same time, his diplomats brought rich gifts to the Galatians, and Antiochus wanted to back the famed Celtic warriors. So he goes to Galatia and he gives them gifts just in case I'm going to go to war with Rome. I want your Celtic warriors. Can you help me? And basically, that's what he does. He's trying to be diplomatic. He's trying to get into people's good graces. He's trying to marry, I don't know how many daughters he had. Every daughter he has to some king. To basically, he's finagling his way, and he's being smart, right? Well, we'll figure out that he's not that smart, but in the beginning, he's doing this diplomatic mission stuff. So now, an event that happened in 194 BC proved that the modern audience how interconnected the ancient world was. Everybody knows the Carthaginian general Hannibal Barca, and Greg, thank you. Last time did an incredible job talking about Punic Second War. We knew that Barca, had obviously survived even after the Battle of Zama, and went to the king Antiochus, right? And wanted to become his mercenary general. Antiochus was very suspicious of it, right? He received them very politely, but Romans also sent the envoys to Antiochus saying, listen, don't mess with us, because this guy literally depopulated at some point at the Battle of Caen and Tresemme, depopulated our whole consulate here, or Senate. Everybody in Senate lost somebody, and you want to accept this guy as your friend? Think twice. So now Hannibal is this smart, right? He sees that this Roman envoys came in and they're finagling the way. They're trying to ask some questions. How long he's going to stay here? What's happening? Is he going to be, part of your, general squad? And so Antiochus is very careful. He's very polite, careful, but still receives them with pompous things. Now, it's interesting. Some historians blame Hannibal for letting Antiochus to attack and cross the Aegean Sea, and then therefore challenge Rome. But Hannibal by that time was already in Syria, had nothing to do with it. Even though there was a battle later on where Hannibal was, interestingly enough, an admiral of Antiochus' fleet, and he was not a navy guy. So strangely enough, he did a good enough job, but still lost to the Rhodian navy, so to speak. Romans worried about the Hannibal rival, sent their envoys. Roman diplomats deliberately paid more attention to Hannibal, understanding it will put him in danger. Hannibal told Antiochus the story of basically when his father told him, you have to agree on this sacred agreement that this is going to be your blood revenge against Rome. And Antiochus kind of was taken with that when Hannibal told him this story. But what's interesting is now he's kind of like advising him, but really not telling him what to do. But he's a famed general. There was another regional power looking for allies, Aetolian League. I showed you the Aetolian League, the location of it, and they thought that, well, if the Achaean League already agreed a peaceful agreement with Roman Empire or Roman allegiance, why don't we go into Antiochus and try to agree with him? See, because we don't want the Achaean League to take over, basically. So unexpectedly, Aetolian League actually passes a resolution. Their counselor passes a resolution inviting Antiochus to liberate Greece and settle affairs with Aetolians and Romans. So Aetolians is already encroaching on, Aegeans and Romans. So they already, Romans already are kind of like coming to very close in contacts through their Achaean League, and therefore Aetolians invited Antiochus. So it's interesting is the first move, the war was made by Aetolians. So they're kind of an instigator, right? They're saying we have a backing of Antiochus, and we can now do something, right? So their troops killed the unpopular Spartan king Nabis, hoping to take over the city and put pressure on the Aegean League. But what's interesting is they tried to create this coup, but the local Spartan noblemen and kicked them out. They didn't like the invaders. Unfortunately for Spartans, they were left defenseless, right? And soon soldier of the Achaean League, which was allied with Rome, entered the city and forced it to become member of the league, ending Spartan independence forever. This is the last time Sparta was independent. Remember I mentioned there's two different leagues, and then there's also independent cities. Sparta was one of the independent cities. Anybody has any questions or wanted to add anything? I don't want to just keep going. Or this is interesting enough, keep going. Nobody's responding. So
no, keep going. It's
okay.
but the question is that at this point, Aetolian League is allied with Antiochus the third, right?
Yes. They're allied with Antiochus.
The third, and Achaean League is with Macedonia and probably Rome eventually, right?
Correct. That's correct.
So these are the kind of disposition of the forces.
That's correct. Yeah. Thank you for clarification. If something that I say is not clear, and like I said, this is last minute preparation. I apologize, but I'm trying to do the best I can. Sorry. So now Antiochus is being smart. So he crossed Hellespont. You can see here, he's crossing Hellespont. He lands in the city of Chalcis. Chalcis is allied with Rome, and said, sorry, don't land here. We don't want you. So he goes inside to the city Calamus. And now he sends invoice to everybody. I don't want, I want everybody to be on the same page. I want to send invoice to see if people are going to support me. So one of the invoice, so he basically to send it to the Macedonians, the Achaeans, and also Athenians. Athenians were they were kind of Greek, but not really Greek. They were kind of like in between, like kind of Macedonians were before Alexander the Great. And so he even sent invoice to them, So
who are you talking about? I didn't get it.
Athenians. Yeah. So anyway, so he sends an invoice, and one of the invoices he sends is to Athens. You can see it right here. It's Athens, right? Athens has two different parties, right? They have a democratic party that's aligned more with Antiochus, and then they have an oligarchic party wanted to side with Romans. Obviously, they're gonna get more land, and Rome sounds like all this, really a force that. So two different parties in Athens. There's skirmishes going on in Athens. They're fighting each other. Who is going to help who? In the end, Athens just remained neutral, basically. They don't want anything to do with anybody. So anyway, Rome now sees that this guy is Antiochus, who came from Asia Minor, into the mainland Greece, is making this stride, sending invoice to everybody. They start sending invoice to everybody, right? They're telling Macedonian Philip V, do you remember we defeated you and you said that you're going to help us? He said, yes, I'll confirming that. Then they go to Boeotian League. They said, okay, we're going to go with you. Then they go to Sicily League, which they set up actually themselves. Romans set it up, so they support them now. So all these people, and on top of it, they sent 20,000 troops with a counselor called Marcus Babius, and I'm sorry if I butchered his name, Bibius, into the Epirus to try to then see if they can kind of like navigate their way through, see what's going on. So what's interesting is, despite the fact that Romans now outnumber Antiochus in here, the Romans had no intention to look for aggression, but didn't decree a war. But Romans' presence was enough to keep Macedonia in check. So they sent 20,000 troops and say, Macedonians, do you still agree with us? Do you still want to be with us? And of course, they had no choices. Of course, yeah, we will agree. Unfortunately for Romans, they had to support their allies, right? So they went to Epirus and they invaded from here to here. And now all of their allies asking for help because this guy is here with troops, and Antiochus. So now Chalcis, where Antiochus landed and Chalcis reassured their allegiance to Rome, asked for reinforcements. Babius, Marcus Babius, who was the consular, sends 500 legionnaires their way, right? But what's interesting is they get captured by Antiochus, but Antiochus doesn't want war. He releases them back. So go back home. Just don't come here. And on top of it, Antiochus puts his general Polixenides to block the narrow Aropus Strait between Chalcis and mainland Greece and march south the remainder of his army. So he has Polixenes, you take his navy and block the area, but then he just marched south by himself to kind of tell Greeks, here I am, I'm sending invoice, agree with me, we're going to make a stand to Rome. By the time Roman contingent reached the crossing, it was blocked by Seleucus navy, which I said they got captured and released. Now, it's interesting is that in 191, Antiochus noticed that members of Boeotian and Tallian League started to mobilize because they're supporting Rome, right? They're right here. They're starting to mobilize. And he went into the city called Pherae and massacred all the defenders, Antiochus, right? So now Greeks are just worried about this guy. Okay, now he's going into the Greek towns. He told us he doesn't want to hurt Greeks. He's our, strategoi, and here you go. He's killing Greeks. Marcus Babius sent troops. By the way, I just want to make a disclaimer. Most of the things we know about Antiochus are written either by Polybius or what is his name? Roman
Titus Livius.
Titus Livius, yeah. So take it with a grain of salt. Both hate Antiochus. They hated with, even though Polybius was Greek, they hate him. All right. So now, so Marcus sent troops. Well, basically, okay. So I said that. All right. So Marcus sent troops as a reconnaissance unit in the city of Tempe. They built a larger camp full of extra campfires to exaggerate the numbers. So Marcus then heard about those 500, kind of like gone. They came back. He sends 4,000 troops as a reconnaissance unit to the city, at Tempe next to Chalcis, and they said, make a big noise, try to create more fires so that people think there's more troops here. And Antiochus didn't want to have any problems. Retreats to the city of, to Thermopylae. As we know, Thermopylae was important during the war of against Xerxes, and he wanted to be Greek, and basically went to Thermopylae, said that I have less troops than Romans, because Romans sent with Scipio and Glabrio more 15,000 troops. So now I had 40,000 troops on land. He only had only about 15,000 troops. He said, I'm going to go to Thermopylae and defend the strait against the Romans, and I'm going to win, because the 300s did that. It wasn't really 300s. There was 8,000 Acadian troops and stuff like that, but we talk about 300s. So you want to be Greek and you want to be like 300s and stuff like that. So now, in show how crucial this war was for Romans, two ex-consular, Marcus Porcius Cato and Larius Flaccus, were chosen by him as a legatus. So Scipio chooses these two people. He was sent as a consular. This is two ex-consuls as being legatus. That's how important this war was with Antiochus. And remember, again, like Greg did the presentation last time, this is after the defeat of Carthage, second at Zama. Okay, so Scipio is basically going out there, and he's an amazing general, and then he's hiring ex-consulars to help him as legatus. While the main army was crossing the Adriatic, Scipio went on the diplomatic tour of Archaea and Athens, sarcastically claiming that Antiochus waged war through letters and fights with pen and ink. So Romans engaged in diplomacy, but they making fun of Antiochus, saying that he is actually saying all this invoice, and he's fighting this war with pen and ink, is running away from us everywhere. So before Glabia reached Illyria in March, Babius and Philip V, which is a Macedonian king, started their campaign against Seleucid garrison and Sicily. And Sicily is aligned with Rome. Antiochus, meanwhile, consolidated his forces in Boeotia and moved west toward Acarnania in order to add Epirus's troops to his. So he basically just went to Epirus land, and he says, I want more troops. I only have a certain amount of troops, 20,000 troops. I need more. And Epirus is still not certain who he's going to support. So it's uncertain whether he's going to join or not. Also, he takes over the port in Acarnania, basically to cut the direct line between Italy and Aquian League. So here he takes on the port, and now he wants to cut the resupplying of Romans into the Greek islands. Okay, so Romans now have over 35,000 troops in the area, was supposedly by and then also have 5,000 strong army from Philip, so 40,000 total. Antiochus' army, even with addition of the Aetolians, numbered less than 20,000. There were no allies to find in Greece. No reinforcements came from Asia, were coming any soon. So he asked for reinforcement from Asia, but it takes time to cross the Aegean Sea, and they're not coming anytime soon. Okay, so he retreats to Thermopylae, which is right here. So let's just, I just want, basically in Thermopylae, there is two different straits, or you could call them mountains. There's a mountain Titius and Califramus. So he basically goes in there and he sets up, about 1,000 troops around the mountain, and all the other troops around encamping there. A small army would have bottleneck. So the problem with that area in Thermopylae, right? A small army could have bottlenecks, a much larger force in a passage. So a small army can defeat a bigger army in Thermopylae, but the mountains had numerous paths. As you know, that's how 300 lost, because of the path that they were able to bypass and attack him from the back, making it impossible to outflank the defenders. Archaeodas had 12,000 footmen and only 500 horsemen, as the Roman cavalry outnumbered Seleucus 4-1. Okay, so the cavalry also is in deficiency. So he probably didn't really think that, they will, this would really be that bad. So king decided that, they will block off the mountain path with 1,000 hoplites. He built a wall covering a gate, placing a few catapults and ballistas on top. His skirmishers were positioned on the high ground to the left of the passage in order to send their missiles against advancing Romans, while his phalangists formed up in front of the wall with the peltasts in ahead of them. So he has a small garrison in there. Similarly, Romans had 2 or 3 K troops, 1,000 troops present, with the rest defending Thessaly and blockading Heraclea. Heraclea is a small fortification next to Thermopylae. Okay, that was actually right now is taken by the Aetolian League defense forces. That's helping Antiochus. Gladio knew that he could not capture the passage against the phalanx, but still had to attack a narrow checkpoint and tie up Seleucus forces. So he knew, because of the prior, that he can't, there's going to be bottlenecks. So, but you still need to tie him up, right? So the two groups under Cato and Flaccus, each 2,000 legionnaires strong, were sent to take mountain passes. Meanwhile, Glario camp was raided by Seleucid allies, where he went to defend it. So now Romans are getting attacked from the rear while they're attacking these 2 different mountains. So Cato was able to break through at Mount Caladramas, while Flaccus failed to break through at the Mount of Ticius, right? So after Roman disciplined army attacked head on, basically now it's more problematic. So similarly, Antiochus ordered his peltus to move back, while pikemen moved forward, forming a phalanx. So now Antiochus is being strategic, right? You have a small passage. He's saying, pikemen move forward, form a phalanx, and peltus, move back. Let's see what I can get from this small strait. That's where Romans suffered most casualties, as legionnaires weren't able to reach the phalangites, and it was impossible for them to outflank the foe. phalanx pushed the legions back. So Macedonian phalanx are pushing the legions back. By early morning, though, unfortunately for Antiochus, Cato started to gain the upper hand in Calidromus mountain. And he outnumbered Aetolians 4-1 and was able to rotate fresh troops. Phalanx broke and ran in terror. Okay, so Cato was able to break through because of the fact that, you know, it's organized legionnaires and they're also outnumbering them 4-1. Antiochus abandoned his forces with his cavalry, and more than 10,000 Seleucid Aetolians were killed and captured, you know, so during this fight. Then Romans turned to Heraclea, but walls surrounding it were short, so Romans could not use the decision of numerical superiority. All right, so let me just go to the next slide. So this is a picture of the battle in Thermopylae. And as you can see, Romans are in red, and Cato was able to surround and attack phalanges from the side. Antiochus ran away, and a phalanx broke because of the legionnaires' attack. So let's go to the Heraclea, which is, I don't know, are you guys able to see the slide, or it's too dark? Hello?
Yeah, it's pretty dark, but we can see it, I think.
All right. So what's interesting is Romans, which are in red, now want to attack Heraclea and Ayatollah League that's supporting the Antiochus. And they fortified themselves in Heraclea. Now, first, I'd say 23 days, they were unsuccessful. They weren't able to break through. Then Cato devised a plan where they said, why don't we retreat into our camps to show them that we're not really attacking? So Aetolians might think that they are actually going to relax themselves, which they did. They actually went to sleep. All the defenders went to sleep after the Romans fake retreated. And what he did is he concentrated his forces on the other side of the wall and put lesser of the forces on where he attacked initially, and made so much noise that everybody from Aetolian League defenders went into that left to defend against the Romans, while he was able to break through on this side. So that's basically what happened. So now, interesting fact is the reason Aetolians and the the loss is because of the Roman diplomacy. Logistics on Rome was more superior. Greeks didn't believe that Antiochus was there to liberate them, because he really, he destroyed one of the cities, and Greeks were afraid. And that's why he retreated back to Asia Minor. Anybody has any questions before I move on? Want to add anything?
So what were the losses, basically?
10,000 dead in combination of Aetolian and the Antiochus troops. And we'll talk about the composition of Antiochus troops, who they even had Antiochus even had Armenian cavalry. So it's, there's a lot of nationalities that were part of his, part of his troops. Anybody else want to add anything or ask a question? No? All right. Because this is going to be like kind of short if nobody's wanted to add or say anything. All right. So we already spoke this, it kind of goes into the Seleucus War, part 2. We already just spoke about it. And then part 3. Before I get to the part 3, I want to talk about the major battle that took place. So now Antiochus retreated. He has his general Polyxenus and Hannibal, for all the people, hired guns that will defend now Asia Minor. Romans now part of the, if you go back to the map, just want to show the map back. As you can see, Romans, Pergamon, invaded Pergamon after the Antiochus left. So now they want to invade Asia Minor. So Pergamon allies himself with the Romans, and therefore Antiochus sends Polyxenus and also sends Hannibal, who is not a navy general, to attack Roman fleet. And Hannibal gets destroyed by Rhodians who ally themselves with Rome, destroys Hannibal, and Polyxenus is being blockaded in this area. So therefore, it was a complete and utter defeat. So therefore, Romans then move into the city of Magnesia, battlefield of Magnesia, and that's where the major battle happens. I want to talk about that battle. All right. Before I talk about that,
and the battle, can I have a question? The battle of River Remadon, is that something you're going to cover or not?
no, this was a last minute preparation. We probably would have to do another one on this one.
Yeah. I mean, that was the.
You want to talk about that one? Yeah.
I mean, no, I was not prepared, but it's in major terms. That was the ultimate defeat of Hannibal as an admiral, because he held the
that's what I was saying. It was defeated by Rhodians.
yeah, it was in Pamphylia in the southern part of Anatolia, and that's the river. It's a famous river because there was another battle there that happened, during the Tallian League, in the mid of 5th century. That's all.
I want to just show where it is so that people have more of a picture where it is. So it's in this area right here. So Rhodes took 20 or 30 ships to attack Hannibal. Hannibal was not a navy general, but he used his Phoenician knowledge of seafaring, and basically he was able to assemble around 40 to 50 ships, and then he lost the battle decisively to a second-hand Rhodian battleships, so to speak. All right. While the Polyxenus is being blockaded here, it can't help Antiochus, and Antiochus basically fighting a war without the naval help. All right, so now Rome moves into the more inside of Asia Minor and the area of Magnesia. They meet, right? So let's talk a little bit. I just want to talk about the composition and what did the Antiochus used. So it dates in 190 BC, and what happened is Antiochus III the Great brought elephants, chariots, phalanges, and cataphracts, and Romans crossed the river called Phrygius and set their camp there. Okay. So this is the chariot, or so to speak, the chariot that was used by Antiochus. They still use chariots. Obviously, Romans didn't. And this is phalanges that they use. This is how the cataphracts look. Okay. So how many soldiers? There were about 50,000 Roman soldiers who fought in the Battle of Magnesia, and 70,000 men on the other side. Now, again, who wrote this account is Livy and Polybius. They hate Antiochus. They gave incorrect numbers. They're saying that the Antiochus was outnumbering Romans, which was not true. Modern historians say that the troops were about even. In fact, Antioch had more cavalry than Romans. So purpose of the war, right? To end the previous war when Romans lost war, right? Roman military strategy. Roman military had 3 road formation, and the Roman legions took up the center space of the formation. And I'll talk about the in the battle itself. So left side of the Roman formation was facing the river, and the right side was called the Eumenes and Diophanes. This is a picture of the battle, and now I want to get into the battle. This is the diagram of the battle. So again, so according to Polybius and Livy, Seleucids outnumbered the Romans 2-1, which is not true. It seems that they both think that 25,000 or so legionnaires remained in Greece. But further events disproves that. Modern historians think that armies were equal in size, each around 70,000. Scipio commanded an army made up of 20,000 Romans. Scipion is one of the Scipios. So you can see Scipio brothers is on the left side. It's in the front, but Scipio brothers are attacking. I'll talk about it. Who is where? So Scipio commanded an army, the one who won the Battle of Zama, and his brother, made up about 20,000 troops, 40,000 Italian allies. So they're saying about 70,000 each had. And they said more than Achaeans, Macedonians, and Thracians. Okay, so that's their Roman allies. Pergamese, among 20,000 Hastati, 20K Bracopus, 8K Triari, and a few thousand Velatis. They were supported by 20,000 cavalry. Majority among them, the 20,000 cavalry were Italic equities, and 1,000 Attalid heavy cavalry, 3,000 Pergamese and Aegean Paltas, and 2,000 Macedonian phalangites. Romans had 16 North African elephants, but Scipio decided not to use them against the bigger, more ferocious Seleucid Indian elephants. Okay, so they brought 16 elephants, but didn't use them. All right. Seleucid had 34,000 heavy footmen, including 16 phalangites, 10,000 silver shield hypaspists, 3,000 Galatian, 2,000 Cappadocian swordmen, 23,000 light missile infantry, among them Peltas, Cretan archers, and Illyrian skirmishers. Antiochus had more cavalry, 8,000 heavy cavalry made up of Armenian and Iranian cataphracts, Median Agema, Hetairoi from Macedonian elite, and 4,000 light horsemen from Galatia, Dacia, Arabs, Arabis, Greek, Asia Minor fighting as tenantines. King had 54 elephants and unknown number of sized chariots. Okay, so there was a lot of chariots and 54 elephants. Roman center at left wing, which consists of legionnaires in 3 lines, a traditional triplex aces in checkboard pattern, with left reinforced by 1,000 Roman horsemen and the elephants in reserve behind the center. The right anchored by the Hermes, and had Achaean Parmenese Peltas in the first rank and 3,000 cavalrymen in the second. Consul Lucius Scipio commanded the center, King Eumenes the right, and a former consular Gaius Dominius Achenorbarbarus left. So Scipio was, in the center. Antiochus himself, was on the right wing, while his son Seleucus was on the left wing. And Antiochus was protected by 4,000 cavalry in the first line and 16 elephants and light Dahi cavalry behind them, with a silver shield behind them as well. So the battle began on the Seleucid left flank, with Eumenes sent forward the archers, slingers, and spearmen to harass the Seleucid sized chariots. All right. The latter began fleeing in panic after suffering heavy casualties and causing confusion among the camel-borne Arab archers and cataphracts positioned behind them. Eumenes then charged with the cavalry before the cataphracts could properly reorganize. The Roman and Pergamese cavalry broke through the Seleucid left flank, causing the cataphracts to flee to the Seleucid camp. Galatians and Cappadocians and mercenary infantry to the left of the phalanx faced a simultaneous attack from the Roman center and the right, causing them to retreat and exposing phalanx left flank. So what's interesting, when chariots attacked, all Romans did, they just split. And therefore, they just went through and they were able to hack them away because they didn't really, they weren't able to hit the Roman legionnaires head on. On the side, Seleucid right flank, Antiochus led the attack with the cataphracts and Agema cavalry facing the Latin infantry, while the Argyraspides engaged the Roman legionnaires. The Roman infantry broke ranks, retreating to their camp where they were reinforced by the Thracian and Macedonian and subsequently rallied by tribute Marcus Aemilius Lepidus. Antiochus' cavalry was unsuitable for taking a camp, and he became bogged down in fighting while his forces were badly needed elsewhere. In center, Seleucid phalanx held its ground against the Roman infantry, but was not mobile enough to dislodge the enemy archers and slingers who bombarded it with projectiles. It began to slow, organized retreat when the war elephants positioned between its taxis panicked because of the projectiles, causing the phalanx to break formation. The phalangites discarded their weapons and abandoned their battlefields. By the time Antiochus' cavalry had returned, reinforced the center, his army had already dispersed. He guarded the surviving troops and retreated to Sardis, while Romans were busy looting the camp. Okay, so he loses the battle, loses the war, and these are the terms of his surrender. So he has to pay 150,000 talents, mostly in gold, which is 500 tons in gold. Hannibal and other enemies have to be given to Rome. War elephants disband. Only keep 10 warships, and a heir apparent was Antiochus versus the Seleucus. That's my presentation. Thank you. Sorry, I mean, we will do another one on this. I'm sure this was like last minute, but anybody has any questions, want to add anything? Let's go back to the map, I guess. Guess not. Hello, can you unmute yourself so that you guys
Hi.
want?
Yeah.
So any questions? You guys want to add anything, or we'll do another session on Seleucus Were. I apologize, last minute, putting it together. And hopefully Mariko is going to be involved in that one as well. So it's interesting. Now Rome had invaded Asia Minor, so and so basically this is the first time they're entering Asia Minor, and they already conquered Sicily, so they're expanding, by leaps and bounds. So I'm doing the first Macedonian War, so hopefully I'll cover some more of this stuff as well. Particularly how the Antiochus was able to diplomatically, marry his daughters away and therefore get a little bit of support in Greece, but not really, because Greeks were afraid that he's going to be the leader, and they were afraid that he might take over, and they didn't want that. There was still a divide between different leagues. They didn't want to unite to fight Romans. So what I wanted to do is next is to look at the where the Antiochus was buried in Google Earth. We'll probably end at that.
Yeah, wait, before you do that, yeah, can we go back to the map? I mean, because I think it's kind of it's a very complicated period. There are so many wars overlapping back and forth, and I think it's important to understand major players. You were talking about all of them, of course, but as you could see this on this map, so amongst the Greeks, like real Greeks, I mean, there is Aetolian and Aquian League. Achaean League is obviously on Peloponnesus, right? And of course, there are Romans. There is Macedonia. That's another player. A lot of Greek states are neutral in this war, right? And then Seleucid Empire is probably already somewhat diminished because the Parthian is rising on the other side, and they already taken some territory. So Macedonia, Seleucid Empire, Syrian Empire, and of course Pergamon is also Pergamon is often allied with Rome, so they also. So did I miss anything important? The only thing it's really we hear nothing about the Egypt, about Ptolemy. He's fighting his own wars, but not in this war. It's not taking sides, right? Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. Ptolemy is 10 years old, so you can't really fight a lot of wars. And
he has advisors, he has generals. Never stopped.
And he's married to the daughter of Antiochus, and that's why he was able to secure his flanks that way. And therefore, that's his son-in-law. So he's not going to attack Antiochus. But Antiochus and Seleucid and Ptolemy fought 5 wars, and it just ended really prior to the Roman invasion, and they were exhausted by that time. Seleucid Empire. And on Bactrian end, there was already attacked by, by indigenous, tribal areas, and Parthians were, encroaching as well. So they were attacked from all kind of sides. And obviously, what he was expecting is if he would have invaded or landed in Greece, he was expecting that more would, kind of like go to him. But they didn't. They stayed with Rome. They were allied with Rome. So it talks about Roman diplomacy and how they were able to keep their allies and in that matter. But at one point, Seleucid Empire, and even at that point, were strong, very strong. And but we're talking about generals like super generals like Scipio. I mean, what can you really put against that guy?
Well, we have Hannibal. They just never encountered in this war. Hannibal was used improperly as an admiral.
He was using his navy. Admiral. He had nothing to do with navy. He's
right.
This was ridiculous.
Well, do we know how well trained his troops were?
Yeah, we don't really know. He's not commanding his own troops. I know that Antiochus was deeply dissatisfied with Hannibal and exiled him later on to this Bithynia, which is the northern part of northwest. I mean, where the Bosphorus, east of Bosphorus, that area, Bithynia. That's where he died, eventually pursued by Romans, who still hated him. But that was years, maybe a few years after the war. Maybe 5-7 years. It looks like when I look at the map, it looks like there is Asia Minor and there is Italy, and there is this Greece and Macedonia and all that area in between. So it really looks on a map like there are these 2 major forces that are just allied with various things. Trying to, I imagine that both of them their objectives eventually is to dominate the Greece, and on all other territories, Greece and Macedonia, all of that territory on that peninsula. I think. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, that's a correct statement. Howard, you want to say something?
No, at this point, yeah, I'm trying to take it all in here.
So,
It's a tough subject to do. I had trouble to do with this with Paris.
well, maybe we talk a little bit about how all this situation developed, maybe become a little clearer, because it goes back to Alexander and the division of his empire. And for the successors of Alexander, the question was always, would they be content with the piece of Alexander's empire that they had, like Ptolemy in Egypt, or were they going to try to put Alexander's empire back together and destroy their rivals? And whenever somebody would look like they were about to succeed in putting the empire back together, everybody else would band against them to try to take them back down again. So Seleucus, who established the Seleucid Empire, was one of those people that was looking to take everything over and to reconstitute Alexander's empire. He was extremely successful and had really consolidated all of the eastern part, the Afghanistan, the Mesopotamia, Asia Minor, and he was actually in a boat crossing to Greece when he got stabbed in the back by, you mentioned Ptolemy Karamnos. Karamnos means thunderbolt. So Ptolemy Thunderbolt, who was really just an adventurer, really not Seleucus's partner at all. He was someone who fled from the Ptolemy of Egypt's court and was given asylum by Seleucus, and then ended up stabbing him in the back in a rowboat as they were going across the strait. And then the Seleucid Empire kind of fell on some bad days there. The kind of the idea is that you had the big three, which was Macedonia, the Seleucid Empire, and Ptolemy. Now these states, like in particular Pergamon and Bithynia, Pontus, these were little places, and they were always just kind of struggling to hang on. And so when the major empires were strong, they contracted in size and they became very small. And when the major empires had problems, then these smaller kingdoms would try to take advantage of the situation and expand. So there was always hostility between the smaller kingdoms, particularly Pergamum, and the Seleucids. And Pergamon was looking very, carefully or widely for allies to help them against this very powerful, very near force. We talked about the Aetolian League. The Aetolian League was a very interesting phenomenon. The Aetolian League, the Aetolians were considered backward by other Greeks. They did not live in polis. They did not live in cities. The Aetolian League was what was known as an ethnos, which was in the opposite of a polis. An ethnos meant an ethnic region, and they were derided by the other Greeks as being very backward. And they kind of and they were seen as pirates. They were seen as, the ancients would comment how after the civilized Greeks had basically abandoned carrying weapons and during normal everyday activity, the Aetolians were still walking around with weapons. They were robbers, they were marauders, and they were the only Greeks that never submitted to the Macedonians. There were a lot of reasons for this, but they managed to maintain their independence, and they never submitted to the Macedonians at all. And they had a very kind of exaggerated idea of their own importance. And they were initially on Rome's side and kind of inside. Basically, they were very aggressive and very reckless. They first managed to get Rome involved in Greece, and then later said, well, when they realized that you can't treat Rome in an offhand way, then they became hostile. That was a big mistake. And they were counterbalanced by the Aquian League. And the Achaean League was kind of a very, very different thing. These were the cities, the very and I'll say that Polybius was a member of the Achaean League. That was his affiliation, and Polybius's real idol among the Greeks was a guy named Philopoemen, and Philopoemen was the head of the Achaean League. So that's kind of who the players were. The Romans, at the point that they saw the opportunity to get involved against the Seleucids, everybody knew that Asia Minor was the richest place in the world. So everybody in Rome wanted to make war in Asia, particularly in Asia Minor, because that was how you got rich. And the settlement at the end, the most significant part of the settlement after the Battle of Magnesia was that the Seleucids were essentially kicked out of Asia Minor. Their border was the Taurus Mountains. They couldn't go north of the Taurus Mountains, and that was kind of that was essentially the beginning of the end for them. Antiochus III had initially been very successful, and his mission was to restore his kingdom to the status of Seleucus the Great. And he did accomplish, up until this time, the area of Palestine, Judea, was actually under control of Ptolemy and the Egyptians. And the Seleucids had been trying to capture that for 100 years. And Antiochus III actually succeeded in doing that in the year 200 BC. And he was really, he then tried to restore his boundary in the east. That was kind of a losing proposition because it was too big. And then decided to become an adventurer, took on the Romans, and that was suicidal.
Yep. Well, definitely was not a good idea.
Paul, question. What was the motive of the guy who stabbed the back on the boat?
I think he just figured that he would, that at the point that it became clear that Seleucus was trying to make himself the emperor of Alexander's empire, I think he figured that by killing him, he would then become, if not his successor, but he would then have leverage. He would have basically provided a service to all of Seleucus's rivals, and that he would then, his own profile would be raised, and so he was an adventurer looking out for himself, and he thought that he had an opportunity to rise in the world by killing Seleucus.
Do we know his fate?
I don't recall, so I can't answer that. I don't know.
No. Okay. Thank you.
I know the impression I'm getting from reading up on King Pyrrhus and reading about the Greeks and Sicily and stuff like that is like a standard explanation for the collapse of the old kingdoms, which obviously didn't happen in Macedonia and Epirus and places like that. It is the standard thing is they developed hoplite tactics and they had a large armed citizenry they couldn't keep in line. But I think a second factor is these guys needed to be babysat. If they weren't supervised, they started a war somewhere, or they murdered somebody, or they even a stable succession seems to have been a challenge for them.
Oh, it was a stable succession was a huge challenge for the entire ancient world. I mean, it was one of the reasons that the Romans were successful is because they had a reasonably stable succession of yearly magistrates who were elected. And and then later in the Roman Empire, they succumbed to it too. The huge question from them was the succession question. How do you maintain your kingdom when you've centralized all the power under one individual? And no one ever really solved it. It was, the real weak point of the political structures of the ancient world. The Romans had transcended it for a few hundred years until their empire got too big to govern in that way.
Yeah, to your point, Howard and Paul, in none of them ended on their own terms. Everybody except one king, that is, everybody else was either stabbed or killed, or so it was kind of like what was happening to the Roman Empire.
Well, the story of the Macedonians is, it really reads like Game of Thrones. There's so much. It's just overpowering how many assassinations and harem, conspiracies. It was just extraordinary.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. If the Greeks would have united, they would have crashed Rome. They had so much power. It's crazy, but they were not united.
Yeah, well, but I don't think their very nature, they based on where they came from.
Oh, there was a right. You're right. I'm sorry. So go ahead. There was
the problem with anybody fighting the Romans is you get in a battle with the Romans, you defeat them and slaughter lots of Romans. The Romans just go home, raise another army, and come back, and you fight again.
Yeah, but Antiochus could do the same thing. He had the whole empire in his hand. He could raise army just as good, if not bigger, than Rome. The problem was that when he invaded Greece, and I forgot to say that, he married one of the noblemen from Caucasus, and during that, basically they have a ceremony where they have public sex or whatever. They were appalled because he was at war with Rome, and here he is having sex with a young woman and drinking a wine that's not mixed. So he was not Greek to them.
Yeah, but that's what you read in the histories, and it's all. I don't really think that has actually much effect on actual politics. That's what gets filled in later because it makes a good story. But I think what's more going on is the fact that the Greeks didn't like being dominated. They were they wanted independence. They wanted to have the right to fight with each other forever, and they were dominated by King Philip and Alexander, and they were trying to rebel against the successors and always getting crushed. And the reason that they distrusted Seleucus is because they knew that Seleucus was coming to enslave them. Seleucus was coming to reconstitute Alexander's empire and rule them. And the Macedonian dynasts had always, since Antigonus I, had developed this propaganda notion of the freedom of the Greeks. So this idea that they were going to liberate the Greeks and give them their freedom was a propaganda ploy that had been used, as I say. So Antigonus started doing that in around 320 BC. And so they'd heard it all before, that, I'm coming to free you. But in fact, they knew that was not why he was there, and everybody there was well versed in realpolitik, and they were trying to make alliances to achieve their own ends. For the Greeks were basically independence, not to be dominated by these foreigners coming in.
But it's interesting though, Paul, and you've already spoken about it. The Greek identity was that lost between them conquering so many territories and people then being so different because of the fact that they've been in so many territories, and then him coming in they consider him to be a foreigner in that regard as well. I don't know. That's such an interesting fact, though.
Well, the classical Greeks looked down on the Macedonians and the Epirotes. So it was awkward. It was awkward when what you're saying makes sense if we're going off to conquer Persia. It makes a lot less sense if we're attacking Sparta or Argos or Macedonia or Epirus.
True. No, it's true. I mean, while I'm looking, let's continue the discussion. This is an interesting discussion. Anybody else have anything to add? Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Howard.
Yeah.
What I'm doing right now is I wanted to get to the Antiochus first burial ground. And then I wanted to then look at one of the Seleucids temples. So just to see that if there was any kind of, I don't know if I spelled it correctly, Antiochus. 1 second, guys. One second. What the hell is this? All right, 1 second. Let's get to the temple first, and then we'll get to his burial ground.
Why are we looking at Jerusalem?
Yeah. Why? Oh, no, we were doing the presentation on the what you might call it, the first. 1 second. I'm just trying to get to the. One second. I don't know what's going on. We're doing presentation on First and Second Crusade. So we were looking at Jerusalem. Let's see what do we got. No, why is it taking there? All right, 1 second. What's going on?
So what are we doing?
I'm looking at the Antioch burial ground, Antioch the First.
Oh, the first.
Mm-hmm.
So Antioch the Third was had the title Great, right?
Yes.
He did a lot of stuff, and actually his son Antioch, the Antiochus the Fourth Epiphanes, was the one famous from this uprising of Maccabees. Just to put it in perspective.
Rome played an interesting role in that as well.
Oh yeah, he was in Rome as a hostage, right? The Epiphanes during his father's reign.
That I didn't know about, but what I do know is that he, before he really tightened the screws on Judea, Judea was also an ethnos. It was not a polis, and kind of doing all right. They were under the rule of Ptolemy until Antiochus III finally beat them. Antiochus IV wanted to basically surpass his father, and he also tried to invade Egypt. And there's a really famous story about that, how the Romans sent one old senator, and he met Antiochus IV as he was approaching Egypt. And he went up to him and he said, "The Senate demands that you go back." And he had a staff with him, and he drew a circle around Antiochus in the sand, and he says, and you answer my question before you leave this circle. And Antiochus is standing with an army, and this guy is all alone, an old man in a toga with a staff. And Antiochus turns around and heads back, and on the way back home is when he decides that he's going to take it out on the Jews. And there's a real relationship there. Antiochus IV is humiliated by the Romans and strikes against the Jews on the way back from that exact attempt to conquer Egypt.
So
Really, but how? Why on on Jews? The Romans were not
Well,
protected.
the Jews, I mean, there's a big factional thing going on among the Jews, so it's complicated, but there were pro-Ptolemaic factions among the Jews. And the Jewish high priests were basically using huge bribes to get whoever the Seleucid king to confirm them as the high priest, and promising them more revenue than was ever possible from Judea, and then engaged in this religious persecution to try to really. It was the first time that the Jews were attempted to be really wiped out and suppressed their religious practices. You could get killed for having your child circumcised, for example. So there was a revolt, and it was putting down that revolt that Antiochus took out his frustration at the way he had been humiliated by the Romans.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. So we finally got to the site. This is on the left, what you can see is the head of the Antiochus I. This site is in Nemrut Dağ, which is the Nemrut mountain in Turkey. And basically, it supposedly was 50-meter high made burial mound situated upon the peak of Nemrut Dağ within the Taurus Mountain range of southeast Turkey, over 2,150 meters above sea level. The site was rediscovered in early 1881 by Karl Sester, a German engineer assessing transport routes. But the statues have been identified at Antiochus I and pantheon of Greek, Armenian, Iranian deities. Antiochus practiced astrology of a very esoteric king and laid the basics for calendrical reform by linking the Comedian year, which till then had been based on a movement of the moon, to the Sothic star of Sirius, cycle used by the Egyptian as a basis of their calendar. So this is the site in Turkey, Mount Nemrut, and that's the one I wanted to get to. Look on the other side. So at one point it was a 50-meter site.
But the head was cut off. What happened? Was it cut off from the statue? I mean, any other remains?
Let me see. Although Bazan suffered, although Armenia initially succeeded. Yeah, the head was cut off. Other statues are broken into pieces, if you can see on the left.
Who did that? Do you know?
No idea. Sorry for that.
Yeah, I know it's a very famous site. I wanted to get there at some point, but never did. It's not very far from Cappadocia, right?
Is it next to anything? Would people steal the construction materials?
I don't know.
Well, not anymore, but probably since they, like the Valley of the Kings, right? Before even people got to that 2,000 years ago, they were looted.
Well, I thought they were looted almost immediately, weren't they?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So 5,000 years ago. I don't know exact
No,
date.
no, some of them were looted. Some of them were looted
the
through
king's
many thousands of years. It wasn't that easy to loot it. I think they were guarding it, and they were very complicated. I think the reason why the King Tut's survived is because they transferred it to under another tomb, so nobody knew about it.
Yeah. So that's a better view of it, but I just wanted to go there to see the site. And
Wow, a lot of heads, but no bodies.
nobody, exactly. That's actually an interesting how they have some I guess it's eagle heads too, animal heads, so to speak. But the site itself is pretty interesting. Very beautiful.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I actually wonder, have they identified every head or what they?
As when I was in Turkey,
Yeah.
and you know, this is a sad news. They're not interested in Greek art whatsoever. Outside of the Istanbul Museum, Archaeological Museum, there is unidentified graveyard of pretty important people, and it just lays there to rot. Basically, they don't care. Unfortunately, yeah, it's an unfortunate thing, but what are you gonna do?
They also don't have much of the funding. Often, usually foreign funding that brings archaeological digs.
Aaron, Deborah, Rolf, Beverly, Nancy, anybody else, anything you guys wanted to ask, or we're all good? I'll just release people a little bit earlier, 17 minutes before. Make sure, look at our schedule. I'm going to be adding some really interesting presentations. Like if you guys are interested on learn about the Muslim religion, where they talk about Sharia law. Narul is going to talk about it, and I think Richard wants to collaborate. I'm not sure, but he's going to bring a friend, and he's going to talk about women in Islam. You know, particularly what's going on in Afghanistan. People want to know why they're not, you know, able to go to school, universities, and whatnot. We want to understand: is that a law, tribal law? Is that from coming from Quran? How do people interpret it and stuff like that? So that would be in November. And then we're going to talk about archaeology in Asia. That's going to be Alex C. is going to present that. And probably in November, we'll talk about Hyksos on Egypt. So a lot of things. And next week, Paul is presenting on second part of the Roman expansion. So we're going back and forth, right? You know, but at some point, we'll catch up with the schedule. So I want to wish everybody a nice evening, and see you Tuesday, Thursday, Sunday. Which one?
Also Wednesday, right?
Oh, Wednesday. Don't forget Wednesday, Kimon. It will be really interesting.
It's a Life of Kimon by Plutarch. We're going to go through this, and you don't even have to read it because we're going to do some reading along the way and discussion.
And Deborah, you're new. Thanks for joining. I appreciate that. And Nancy.
Yeah, just I've been to a few before, and I just wanted to say I'd be interested in the history of Islam. That sounds good too.
Yeah, I'll post
and,
it. Yeah.
So are you every week now?
We're basically 3 times a week now. I mean, not doing on my own, but we have so many presentations, and people are different, right? Today I was just replacing Marika. She was supposed to present, but she's traveling to Buenos Aires, so she couldn't present. And but she did a good job on philosophy of Greek philosophy. So I was thinking this would be a kind of natural progression. And again, Deborah, if you want to present on something, we have a schedule of things. If you're interested, again, we're here. You know, some of us are learning. Like I'm learning. You know, I'm interested. You know, some of us really have good knowledge and can do really good presentations, and and has a so to speak, skill of gap and can present it and explain it more. And I'm more of an organizer, but I do replace people here and there when they can't present. But I'd like to do a better job. Obviously, today was a hodgepodge fast type of thing. But if you look at our YouTube channel, which I'll post right now on omnicard.org, some of our presentations are through the roof amazing. Like you can, on this particular topic, Paul and Greg's presentation, Howard presentation, really good presentations. And then again, we're not here to judge anybody. If you can present it however you want to present it, we can add things as we go.
I think for now I'll just be listening and participating by making comments. But we'll look forward to being, I guess, at least once a week, hopefully, listening in. And thank you very much. Have a good week, everyone.
Yep.
Sure. Thank you.
Guys,
Okay.
see you later, guys.
Okay.
Everybody, thank you very much.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.